and welcome to QC Crime Watch. I'm Sharon Wren. Linda Cook is out right now. Before we begin, we have to do the disclaimer. Linda is not a legal professional. I am not a legal professional, and while Officer Shoemaker here may know the law, she's not going to tell you how to act in court, so don't call us for legal advice. We've got some the news here this week. Whiteside County Sheriff's Department was busy yesterday because they arrested 3 people on outstanding warrants in 3 different incidents. This all happened June 29th. In the first one, officers were called to the 1700 block of East Rock Falls Road at about 2 p.m. for an unrelated service call. They made contact with an individual named Carrie Kinnison of Rock Falls who had an active Ogle County warrant against her. She was arrested without incident, transported to the Ogle County Jail. Next, deputies conducted a traffic stop on Illinois Route 84 near Lock Road about 2 hours later for a speeding violation. Deputies ran the plates, as they do, and learned that there was a Carroll County warrant out for the registered owner who was a passenger in the vehicle. Her name is Kayla Beatty of Clinton. She was also arrested and turned over to the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. Finally, at 5:48, they wrapped up the day when they learned that William Clark of Rock Falls was at McDonald's, and he had an outstanding drug warrant from Ogle County. He was taken into custody and transferred to the Ogle County Sheriff's Office. So when there's a warrant out for somebody, they are actively looking for this person, and sometimes they just get all their resources together and make a major arrest. Like in our next case, the U.S. Marshal's Office from the Southern District of Iowa, the Northern District of Iowa, and the Central District of Iowa joined forces, I gotta read this because I'll lose it, with law enforcement officers from the Scott County Sheriff's Office, Bettendorf Police Department, and the Iowa Department of Corrections between May 19th of this year and June 20th to conduct a 5-week-long fugitive operation in Scott County and surrounding communities that they called Operation River Run. That led to the arrest of 52 fugitives on outstanding local, state, and or federal warrants. They picked up some really good ones here. Each person arrested had pending criminal charges for crimes like homicide, guns, drugs, assault, other crimes of violence. Operation River Run was divided into 3 phases. Between May 19th and June 1st, the agencies picked arrest warrants that they would search for the individuals. And then from June 2nd to the 4th, 3 teams of law enforcement officers representing 11 local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies participated in the 3-day operation. And in the follow-up phase from June 5th to the 20th, they continued to find and arrest more people who weren't originally on their list. Most of these people were arrested in Scott and Rock Island counties, but others were arrested between Sioux City, Iowa, and Chicago. So the folks are busy, and they're getting the bad guys off the streets. And speaking of busy folks, we have a guest this week. She's our second guest. Detective Jamie Shoemaker with the Geneseo Police Department is here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
She was recently awarded the 2025 Lieutenant Aaron Landers Crisis Intervention Team Award for her work in crisis intervention and mental health. Last year, she was named the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board Executive Institute's 2024 Women in Criminal Justice Female Officer of the Year. Oh my God, how did they get that on a trophy?
Yeah.
And a winner of the 2023 Flock Safety Solved Awards. So she knows how to get the bad guys. So thank you for joining us today. So can you expand a little bit about what the community-oriented policing is for folks who don't know?
For community-oriented policing, obviously, it's being more active in the community. The awards that I have worked with here, actually all of them are not only for community-oriented policing, but it's actually trying to decriminalize mental illness and helping those individuals get connected with needed services, because that is actually something that's really hard to do, especially with somebody who has mental illness or substance use. And if they don't have any advocates, we are helping them to be their advocate to help them connect to resources.
Okay, so what sort of calls do you go out on?
Crisis calls, so somebody that's in need. So majority of law enforcement, majority of people that are in jail, unfortunately, we have a lot of mentally ill in our jails. A lot of individuals that are arrested, sometimes they're confused or disoriented as far as their mental illness goes, and they will self-medicate with substance use. The unfortunate part is if they don't have anybody advocating for them, it makes it really hard for them to trust people, especially with somebody who may have schizophrenia or some type of auditory hallucinations they don't know what's real or not real. So if they're having a psychosis episode, they're on the street, it makes it really hard for them to ask for help.
Okay, so let's say a citizen notices a person, near their house who's in a crisis situation, and then you go out there. What is it that you do? Do you try to get the person to contact like family to get help? Or?
So if you have typically in those situations with what'll be called in is either a check welfare or a suspicious person. Somebody will say there's an individual standing at the corner and they're talking to themselves. I'm sure we've all seen those types of people. That person is in a mental health crisis. And so the unfortunate part is in society and in movies, we laugh at people who are so-called crazy. I really try to break stigma with this. Mental illness is a disease. Somebody with asthma, if they're having an asthma attack standing on the road, we call the ambulance and we get them help. We don't laugh at them. We know they're in a crisis. If somebody is having a psychosis episode or a mental illness crisis, we think it's funny and we don't approach it as a disease. So my job, I feel as a human being, is to break stigma. So what I try to do is I go around, I do speaking events to multiple agencies. I host a first responder conference. We educate first responders. That's not just law enforcement, that's paramedics, that's nurses, that's ER staff, that's social workers. Trying to connect them with services and just really breaking the stigma for an individual. So when that individual is standing in the corner talking to themselves, you take time and space. I work with the CIT team for the state, and I help train officers throughout the state to actually understand how to handle a psychosis episode as a police officer. You have to slow things down. You have to give them space. The last thing that you want to do, if somebody is hearing voices or auditory hallucinations, some of I guess when you're younger and you're just learning this job, you want to put hands on people. Now, if I'm hearing voices in my head that are telling me to kill myself or kill somebody else, the last thing we want somebody to do is put hands on. So we need to take some time and space. And you ask an individual, are you maybe hearing something or seeing something that I may not be hearing or seeing? And they will tell you. It'll take a little bit more time. You have to give them about a 20-second delay, because when you have headphones on and you're listening to music and somebody asks you a question, you have to process not only what the person's saying, but what's going on in your headphones, correct? It's no different with a person experiencing auditory hallucinations. So you have to take some time and space.
Oh, that is a really good way to describe it. I hadn't put together that listening to somebody with headphones and then having to process all of it. That's a really good description.
The 40-hour CIT class that the state offers, we do actually they have a program where they put headphones on police officers and they play auditory hallucinations. So there's voices in the head. Now we ask them to write down the national anthem. The officers cannot process. It takes, usually they'll get 1 or 2 sentences out. Or the Pledge of Allegiance. It's just something that we all would know, right? But if you're listening to 3 or 4 voices in your head and then we ask you to do something, well, as officers, put your hands down, step away, sit down, do these things. So we're offering commands, but that person is also taking a release a longer period of time. So we want to educate officers and first responders to know that it takes them a little bit more time. Like I said, somebody with asthma, do we just tell them it's in your brain, just breathe through it? No, this is a person who has a disease. So we're trying to break that stigma. Within that, just breaking that stigma, so we talk about substance use. Now, if somebody has an addiction to methamphetamine or marijuana, and they're also having auditory hallucinations. I had an individual, if you were going to talk about crime, an individual that came into our city, they were dropped off by the Illinois State Police at our local hospital. This individual, she was a female. She tried to set herself on fire inside of a semi. Now, her name was Brenda, and Brenda came into the hospital and she was high off methamphetamine and marijuana. When I talked to Brenda, and she was a very large woman, so she was a little intimidating, but I said, she was talking to somebody and laughing, carrying on. Like, as you and I are talking here, if you and I were joking around and laughing, I was standing off to the side. So I tried to approach her. I give her some space, obviously, when I know what's going on. I said, Brenda, I obviously knew her name. I said, are you hearing or seeing something I'm not hearing or seeing? And she looked at me, looked back at her conversation and continued conversation and started laughing. Then she looks back at me and she says, yes, I am. And then continued her conversation with her voices. I said, okay, would you tell me? Now, this is the key part as a police officer. Will you tell me what those voices are telling you? The reason why I want to know that, why would you think I'd want to know that?
Because the voices may be telling her to hurt someone or hurt herself,
right.
Or
so
do something
it's
else.
It's really important. So I said, Brenda, what are the voices telling you to do? They want me to kill you. So now this is where you don't want to react. Naturally, our fight or flight mode wants us to jump back and do all these things. You need to remember Pee Wee Herman?
Yes.
Remember Large Marge?
Yeah.
Brenda was very much like Large Marge. She was a very intimidating woman. So I just took a couple steps back and I said, Brenda, I'd really appreciate it if you wouldn't do that. So Brenda was in the hospital for a week. We got her placed. Brenda was able to get medicated. And she came back and her and I had a conversation about these things. She had experienced schizophrenia, auditory hallucinations the majority of her life. So she struggled with this. It's a very lonely disease because your family and everybody gets frustrated. I said, well, okay, Brenda, I'm like, I know you're lonely and I know this is really hard. I go, but why meth? Brenda didn't have access to pharmaceutical medications. And so she said that when she takes methamphetamine, the voices, the level of tone goes from a 10 to a 2. So Brenda would use methamphetamine to quiet the voices. Not having access to insurance or pharmaceutical medications, this was an easy access for her to quiet the voices in her head. Now remember, those voices in her head told her to set herself on fire in a semi. Could you imagine listening to something so negative and so dark your whole life?
And people have enough problems with dealing with doubt that they hear, imposter syndrome. You don't know how to do this, you're faking. That's just a little thing where it's your job. The voices aren't telling you to do something bad, but those little voices just telling you that you're not good enough, that can cause major impact. So I can't even extrapolate that effect.
And this is just one person in our community that we've helped. I've got a caseload of different people that I can give examples of this. But this is why this is important, is talking about these stories, because now I have made Brenda a human to you.
Right.
She's not just a crazy person talking to herself on the side of the road. You're seeing her and her symptoms, and this is an illness.
Right.
If Brenda had cancer and you went to help her, we'd start a meal train. We'd just do a GoFundMe. People with mental illness and substance use, we're not doing those things. We have to start breaking that stigma. So we do community policing for not only mental health, substance use, but we're also a dementia-friendly community. So we actually offer support for our dementia, our caregivers. We actually do tracking bracelets, so we fundraise, and so our community aspect of things, we work with our community collaborators, and we raise money, so we have tracking bracelets by radio frequency.
Oh, well, like an Apple iTag or something.
Nope, so actually
really?
the Apple tags, so the ID tags, if you are, let's say in this area downtown Rock Island, there's plenty of iPhones around here, right? So you can use those. In a rural community, or if they go somewhere where there's no iPhones, those don't work. If it's cold outside, drones don't work and dogs' noses don't work. These bracelets are by radio frequency, so they work in all temperatures. We have a very old school box with an antenna, and we're able to locate these individuals. Between dementia, mental illness, and substance use, the thing with it is this the fancy stuff of policing? No, I mean, we can talk about homicides like that. The work that we do isn't always shiny, I would say that. It takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of conversations because you have to build trust. These people don't like to tell their stories all the time because people have made fun of them in the past. And so they live in a very dark place.
And nobody wants to be made fun again of them once it's happened. Oh, so have you noticed major impact in Geneseo with this?
Yes, so it's funny you say impact. So impact is our program, Integrated Model Police and Crisis Team. We've been doing this for the last 4 years. The program itself started off as a task force. My chief and deputy chief came to me and said, we'd like you to start a mental illness task force. This evolved into substance use and also crisis services for people that are suffering somewhat even a domestic violence situation. So we started this task force, and so what we do is we follow up with individuals. If I take, let's say that somebody calls me and their husband's suicidal, and we end up having to take him to the hospital. We're going to call that wife the next day and ask her how she's doing. We're going to make sure that they don't need connected to food services. If they have a utility bill that might need to be helped covered, we fundraise to help cover for that. Not that that's always I'm not going to be able to fix every situation, but we try to offer realistic solutions and not just fluffy stuff on paper, because I hate the fluff. I always call it the fluff. We want to say we're doing good, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, these families need more than just, I'm taking your husband to, the hospital, he's going to get inpatient help, and now I've taken your sole care provider. Mm-hmm. So we're going to connect her with services to the food pantry. We're going to make sure that she's set up. If she needs a ride somewhere, we're going to give her a ride. We're doing a different type of policing. So yes, it is community oriented. We collaborate with multiple businesses, banks, everything. We have and team up with them to make sure that we're able to connect these resources.
Okay, what's important for the general public to understand about this kind of policing?
It builds trust. I'm not just gonna. I will have a conversation with anybody all day long about anything. That's just part of who I am. But I think that you have to. Seeing is believing. I've had so many people that I've worked with mental health and substance use, and like I said, crisis situations where we sit down like you and I, and we have conversations. You are a human being. I don't treat you any different than I'm going to treat somebody that's having a mental illness crisis on the street. It's not about being. I'm not going to be cynical. I'm not going to be malicious. This isn't just my job. It's my job as a human being. And I think that it's very rewarding, changing people's lives. Now, I know that the broader spectrum of it, so I got a few 100 people, right? And everybody's like, oh, you can't help everybody. No, but if I can touch 2 people, there's something called the ripple effect. You not only help that person, but you help those person's kids and then the people that they have contact with. So it doesn't get too complicated. Our program is literally just helping people get connected to services and showing them compassion and kindness, where in some other aspects they haven't seen that.
And it's something that they desperately need.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! Well, thank you so much for telling us about all of this. This is really fascinating, and it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of good work.
First, I want to thank Detective Shoemaker for spending some time with us, and we hope to have her on again and more other law enforcement on so that we can take a little deeper dive into the crimes that affect us every single day and some that may not make headlines. So thanks a lot, Detective Shoemaker, and thanks, Sharon, for arranging that. I have about 3, they're short, but they're interesting crimes that have happened recently. The first one happened to a man named Jeremy Begley in Davenport, who was late Saturday at home in bed when he heard what he thought might be fireworks and then realized it wasn't. He ended up with a bullet fragment inside his house, and this was after a shooting incident, gunfire, very late Saturday night in Davenport.
So the bullet went through, went into the door window frame, busted the trim, and the actual bullet fragment was just laying on the floor, a foot inside. I'm thankful it stopped because straight that direction is my bed.
Jeremy Begley talked to us, to our Quad Cities News crew, and he said, "This time of year you play the game, gunshot or firework?" I knew they were gunshots, he said. So the bullet went into the window frame, broke the trim, and the actual fragment was lying on the floor about a foot inside. I'm thankful it stopped, he told us, because straight that direction is my bed. About 10 minutes later, Davenport police were at his house looking at his ringtone video, and there were other pieces of damage in the neighborhood to at least 2 neighbors, including Bruce Gocher, whose 2 trucks were damaged, and there was other property and vehicle damage as well in the area. Some of this apparently was caused by teenagers, so we don't know names and we don't know anything about those cases, but we do know that there have been some arrests. At least one person was in custody, and we hope that this is the end of this. Mr. Begley said it's his understanding that one of the teenagers was released on bond within a few hours, and he was pretty upset about that.
Damaging cars, homes. I really hope our justice system gets back on track and holds people accountable for what they do. I mean, it seems these were all older teenagers. The one I think it suspected was 18. Why is he back on the street in 8.5 hours?
Which is understandable. So we will try to continue to follow this as best we can. I do need to tell you that it is difficult to tell what's happening in cases of minors because to protect them, because they are so young, we are not allowed to see the case documentation as we are with adults. Also in Davenport on Saturday, 33-year-old Davenport man was in custody after police say he crashed a stolen moped into a police squad. Alan Dyer faces a felony charge of second-degree theft, according to Scott County Court records. Davenport police say Dyer was driving a 2021 Lance Havana scooter shortly before 9 o'clock near the 1100 block of Warren Street, and the moped was reported stolen from the University of Iowa hospitals on June 23rd. Now, in affidavits, police say Dyer crashed that moped, valued at $2,569, into a marked patrol squad car, and then he took off running from officers. He didn't get too far. He was being held at least over the weekend on bond, and we will continue to cover that case too. A very violent and very sad case has occurred in Muscatine, and probably you already know about it if you live in the Quad Cities. Today happens to be Tuesday as we're recording this, and I just found out that the suspect in this case in Muscatine has passed away. I feel that we don't need to give his name, but what happened was on Monday, the shooter there was a dispute. He was having a dispute with his girlfriend, or a woman that he knew at least, had a relationship with. And she was shopping in the Hy-Vee on 2nd Avenue in Muscatine. He went into the store, and while there were other shoppers there, shot her, and she died during this fatal incident. He then took off in a car where police found him later. Actually, it was a minivan. And Muscatine police were there. Iowa State Patrol was there, and when our news crew and I were there, we saw them removing things from this minivan that was stopped in an intersection there, very near the store. So this is one of those unbelievable incidents that happens in a smaller town. As we were on the scene, people kept pulling up to us, to our news crew, saying, what happened? How could this happen here? And I wish I had the answer for that. A post on the Muscatine Police Department's Facebook page identifies the suspect as Ian Hernandez. He was airlifted to Iowa City to the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, and I believe that is where he died. Muscatine Mayor Brad Bark posted what I thought was a very heartfelt message on the city's Facebook page, and this is what it says, or at least part of it. Dear Muscatine community, I want to offer my deepest thoughts and prayers for the family of Callista Ray Hallberg, whose life was tragically taken in a senseless act of violence at our Hy-Vee on June 30th, 2024. My heart aches for Callista's loved ones and friends who are enduring unimaginable grief. As your mayor, to every person who witnessed this terrible event carrying the weight of trauma, and to the employees and customers of Hy-Vee and CBI Bank and Trust, we feel for you deeply and want to assure you that your safety is our priority. We stand with you, holding you in thoughts and prayers as we navigate this sorrow together. It goes on and concludes with, I am extremely grateful for the courage and swift response of the men and women of our Muscatine, Iowa Police Department, Muscatine Fire Department, Muscatine County Emergency Management, 9/11, Muscatine County Sheriff's Department, and Iowa State Patrol. We are truly blessed to have these wonderful people who serve our state, county, and community with such bravery and professionalism, protecting us in times of crisis. The City of Muscatine pledges untiring support to our law enforcement as they work diligently to provide answers. This was a domestic dispute, and that has been confirmed by police. So I am going to ask you, if you're watching right now, to go to ourquadcities.com, and that is our website, and find this story. And it's very easy to find Muscatine fatal shooting. We have a list there of domestic violence resources. Please, if you or someone you know is in such a situation, don't hesitate to call. Don't let it get to the point that it did Monday for this poor lady. Call now. Stay safe. Thank you. So, as we always say, thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for listening and for watching. Please, it's going to be hot again this weekend, and keep your cars locked. Even if they're out on the driveway or in front of your house for just a little while, it's still an opportunity. So be careful out there with fireworks, with alcohol, with parties, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks a lot.